Here we go. So good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Jose Zamora. I'm one of the new Ethnic Studies faculty, along with my colleague, Professor Gomez, who's also here. You are hopefully in the right place. This is Ethnic Studies Explained and why it's good for men of color. At a show of hands, how many of you know what ethnic studies is? Okay, kind of, right? Yeah. All right, so good, you're in the right place. What we're going to be doing first is you all have a sheet of blank paper. We're going to be using both sides. You're going to need something to draw with. So go ahead and take out a piece of a pencil, or a pen. Okay, so I usually do this in the first week of the semester, kind of like an icebreaker activity. So what I would like for everyone to do is to look around the room, pick a non-human thing, and draw it. I'll give you about 2 minutes. Ready, set, and go. Pick a non-human thing and draw it. One more minute. Seconds. Okay. So, anyone want to take a guess as to why I have you do this? Or why would I have a class in the very beginning do this? Anyone? As I tell my students, my classes are heavily discussion-based, but I'll never put you on the spot. You could be on the spot if you want to, but you won't be obligated to. So, any guesses as to why I have you draw something in the class? Yes?
Maybe it's to see what you connect to or what draws your attention.
That's good. Yes?
I think it's to tap into your right brain, to look at things differently.
Good. Anyone else? Yes?
I think because a lot of times when we come to a classroom, there is tension, there is uncomfortableness. I think drawing is the most at ease, is feeling like a kid. You know, the drawing, like we doodle. It's so feeling at ease. So if you're already loosening up, your mind's loosened. So when you're being taught, your state of mind has now changed.
Yeah, the best place I like to draw in is on an airplane, right? Especially like when they descend, and you're like, oh no. One of the other things that we have to consider is that some of you probably picked the same item in the room, but you have a different perspective on this item. So now what we're going to do is going to get a little awkward. So what I need you to do is turn that piece of paper over. And I'll give you a little bit more time, give you about 3 minutes. And appropriately, of course, look at someone in the room and draw them. Not me, not me. Look at someone else in the room and draw them. Let's go ahead and give you about 3 minutes. Go.
You're like, I'm done. That's okay.
It'll get more awkward in a bit, don't worry.
No, thank you. Sure, I can take my turn. Palitos.
About 1 more minute. About 10 seconds. And, okay. All right, so this is the awkward part. Whoever you drew, go and give them that painting, or picture, rather.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just take a selfie with yourself. Email it to you. I have the charger, but not the lightning cord. Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna tell you, I came up with the smartphone anyway.
Oh, don't worry about it. Remember to take a selfie of yourself here, okay? And then email that to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I like the different angles.
Well, at first.
if we may.
First started with that.
So this is also part of that same activity, and I do this in the beginning of the semester, right? It's a great way to break the ice with people. Kind of borderline creepy, but
Very borderline.
yeah, very borderline. What I pay attention to is not necessarily the drawing. What I pay attention to is the interaction between people when they give that drawing back. And there are a handful of phrases that are very, very common, right? Whether it's at Cal State Fullerton, Riverside City College, here at Chafee. What do you think is the most common phrase that people tell each other when they give back the drawing? The most common phrase.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, right? Now, my wife's a kindergarten teacher, and she brings home some of those drawings, and the kids swear they're like the next Picasso. They're like, it's amazing, right? It looks just like you, right? It's like, yeah, sure, honey, right? But think about this. If I was to shoot all of you back in time, and suddenly all of you were kindergartners here in this classroom, none of you would be embarrassed of your work. And then here you are in my classroom, embarrassed of what you can do. In ethnic studies, we don't take that approach. Everyone is different, right, as you're about to find out. And so hopefully you learn a little bit about yourself and about what we do here in ethnic studies. I will be showing a few videos every now and then, but what I wanted to actually show you before we get to anything else is we actually have a YouTube page. And on our YouTube page, you'll be able to find this video once I finish editing it. Any talks that we give, as you can see, Professor Gomez did a really passionate talk with Yo Soy Chafee. That's there. Any other collaborations that we'll have. We also post our lectures here. Now, moving back over to my nifty difty PowerPoint. I graduated from Cal State Fullerton in 2011 with my bachelor's and 2014 with my master's. This is 2014. My parents are both immigrants from Mexico. My dad is from Michoacán and my mom's from Zacatecas. And I am what you would consider a first-generation college student. So I'm the first member of my family to go to college. I got my bachelor's degrees in Chicanx Studies and Black Studies, or African American Studies, and my master's degree in American Studies. Some of my favorite books include How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi, Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, and Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, which we'll get to a little bit later. But a little bit of backdrop about me and ethnic studies. This is my abuelita. She is almost 100 years old now. She was the matriarch of my dad's side of the family from Michoacán. One of the things, very similar to the activity that I had you do, I'm pretty sure a lot of you had this experience where you thought that you were dumb for most of the time when you were in school. There was those smart kids that were over there, but me, I'm over here somewhere, and I'm not really that smart, right? Whenever the teacher asks for someone to read aloud, you look down, hoping not to make eye contact, right? And it can be very alienating, and at times I felt very hopeless. But going from there, when I took my first ethnic studies class at Cal State Fullerton, I was instantly hooked. I tell people it's like I felt like I woke up from the Matrix, right? And I was like, whoa, I see things completely differently now. And going from there, a lot of things in my life began to make sense. Specifically, why is it that we immigrated from Mexico in the beginning, right? Why is it that my experience was different than some of my other friends in elementary school? And just to kind of give you a quick definition of what is ethnic studies. Ethnic studies is the critical and interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, indigeneity, with a focus on the experiences and perspectives of people of color within and beyond the United States. And this is copied and pasted straight from the UC Berkeley Department of Ethnic Studies, right? So you can go to their webpage and it says this. Now this is a very basic definition of what we do here in ethnic studies, which hopefully you'll see throughout the course of this presentation. But like I like to say is that ethnic studies is ultimately the studies of humans. Specifically, what processes and what things that exist out there dehumanize us, and more importantly, how can we humanize ourselves? How can we become human again? And to go forward from there, just to get a little bit of clarity as far as what we do in ethnic studies, there are different areas of study. Currently, for those of you who are aware, California made ethnic studies a graduation requirement. And at the California State University, there are 4 major areas of study. The first one being African American Studies, we have Asian American Studies, we have Chicanx Studies, which sometimes is called Latinx Studies, we'll get to that later, and we also have Native American Studies, right? Now, like I said, this is a study of humans, and not all humans fit into these boxes. But this is the way that the state of California chose to divide them. Now, to go a bit forward from here, we have to come to terms with the fact that if this was 40 years ago, this classroom would look completely different, right? The makeup of the faculty and staff would be very, very different. And what I tell my students is that it wasn't that long ago that our classrooms were segregated, right? Not just our classrooms, but our workplaces, our cities, et cetera, et cetera. And a little bit, for those of you who are not aware, this is something that I teach in my Native American Studies class. There was a very, very strong push to recolonize certain peoples, right? So for those of you who are not aware, there was a massive movement in the United States called the Native American Boarding School Movement. And essentially what they would do is they would kidnap Native children from their reservations and literally send them halfway across the planet or the country to what's called a boarding school. This is a school where you live at, right? The closest one to us is actually in Riverside. This is the Sherman Indian School. Now here's the thing that's really creepy about it. The Sherman Indian School down the street has a cemetery attached to it. Why would a school need a cemetery? Well, what we began to discover is mass graves in Canada and across the United States close to these schools. Some of them operated by the Catholic Church, some of them operated by other smaller Christian sects. And it's not like they died of old age. These are like the bodies and skeletons of 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. Right? So we can see here, these are a group of Lakota boys that have been westernized. And the official motto of this program was kill the Indian, save the man. Kill the Indian, save the man. But typically when we think of segregation in the United States, we think of African Americans, right? That's there. We also have to consider that in California specifically, Mexicans were also segregated. Now here's the thing. Mexicans legally, and other, quote, Hispanics, are legally considered white under US law. So whenever you're checking out those boxes, right, it says Hispanic, and underneath it it'll say non-Hispanic white, or Caucasian, what have you. Right? So Mexicans weren't allowed to go to the same schools as whites unless you could pass. Right? If you were light-skinned, if you were light-colored hair. And to go a bit forward from here, one of the things that we have to understand about ethnic studies as a larger discipline across the world is in post-World War II, the Europeans begin to lose control of their colonies, right? So some of the things that you might be familiar with are Vietnam, right? Angola, Cuba, etc., right? Because the European economy was destroyed. They can no longer sustain these colonies abroad. And what begins to happen is decolonial movements all across the world, right? Really what I should call them is decolonial wars. And these wars have been happening for generations. And to go from here, this is where we begin to get, I guess you could call it proto-ethnic studies literature. Some people like Frantz Fanon, Aimé Césaire, Vine Deloria, and Albert Memmi begin to essentially write back. Because, interesting story, I had a professor from Western Africa in my African American literature class as an undergrad. And she said that when she was a kid, her country was only like 5 years old. Before that, it was a colony of the British, right? After that, they tried to create a history program in their school. But what they kept finding was that the teachers that were teaching there only taught that people's history through the perspective of the British. So what they had to do is they literally had to import professors and teachers from the United States, African Americans, to their country to teach a more critical view of their history. Now, to go a bit forward from there, go ahead and skip that. For those of you who don't know, we also had a decolonial movement here in the United States. You might call it the Civil Rights Movement, right, which spanned from, typically people say from the late 50s to the early 70s. But these movements have been consistent. So for instance, you all are familiar with the I Have a Dream speech that Dr. Martin Luther King gave, that March on Washington? That March on Washington was actually supposed to happen during World War II. And it eventually led to the desegregation of the war industry, right? President Roosevelt didn't want protests during the war, right? Now, to go a bit forward from here, in the fall of 1969, the College of Ethnic Studies grew from the 1968 Black Student Union Third World Liberation Student Strike through a coalition of faculty, scholars, student activists, and community members. So the first ethnic studies program to be established in the United States is at San Francisco State, right? And it still remains one of the most radical across the United States. And going a bit forward from here to something that is happening now. In the summer, when I first kind of like started creating a PowerPoint like this for something else, there were 23 US states that had either partially or fully banned ethnic studies. In the course of 2 months, it's now at 36 states. So by the end of the year, a majority of the United States is either going to have a partial or full ban on ethnic studies. And you can see here some of the states that are in pink that have banned partially or fully ethnic studies. And the interesting thing here is that a lot of these states are named after Native American tribes, right? Whether it's the Dakota, the Iowa, right, Mississippi, etc. These are all native words. And so I'm really interested in seeing when they teach the state history, like how did we get the name of this state? What are they going to come up with, right? Now to go a bit forward, you'll see a little bit later, excuse me, the first state to attempt to ban ethnic studies was the state of Arizona in 2009. And we'll see a little bit of that later. But to go a bit forward from there to Fox News and Critical Race Theory, or otherwise known as CRT. So first off, there's ethnic studies as the umbrella, and critical race theory can fit within ethnic studies. It's not the other way around. Now, why did they choose critical race theory as the boogeyman? Flat out, it sounds scary to them. The word critical is never a good thing. The word race, they don't think is a good thing. And theory, what other thing do we think of when we think of theory? Conspiracy theory, right? And there are plenty of those now. But critical race theory originally came out of law schools. So for instance, for those of you who like to study things like Mendez versus Westminster or Brown versus Board of Education, right? That is through a critical race theory lens, which in ethnic studies we do utilize, right? Now, that is not what they think though, and let's actually go ahead and take a look.
They even study it.
Huh?
They study it too.
They
In a different
study.
lens.
Study, yes, in quotes. This is Tucker Carlson. Trigger warning, just, I don't like him. But here we go.
All over the country, beginning early last June, school curricula have changed completely and become explicitly political and openly racist. And most parents have just sat there on their hands and watched it happen and watched their kids hurt by it. But one group of parents in Loudoun County, Virginia, right outside Washington, is fighting back against all of this, against a curriculum that teaches their kids to hate their country and to judge their classmates based on how they look, on their skin color. Several parents had the courage to say this publicly a few days ago at a school board meeting. Watch.
CRT is not an honest dialogue. It is a tactic that was used by Hitler and the Ku Klux Klan on slavery very many years ago to dumb down my ancestors so we could not think for ourselves. CRT is racist. It is abusive. It discriminates against one's color. Let me educate you. An honest dialogue does not oppress. An honest dialogue does not implement hatred or injustice. It's to communicate without deceiving people. Today we don't need your agreement. We want action and a backbone for what we asked for today, to ban CRT. I had to come down here today to tell you to your face that we are coming together and we are strong. This will not be the last. Greet and meet, respectfully.
Wow. The first time we saw that video, our instant response was, that woman, her name is Chantel Cooper, deserves an award. She's a mother, she's a member of the group Parents Against Critical Theory. We're very pleased to have her on the show tonight. Chantel Cooper, thank you very much.
Just a little bit. She's actually a paid actor. So, right now, one of the things that I bring up in my classes is it's very stereotypical, like have another white person who is against ethnic studies. There's a lot of utility in basically using them against them, if that makes sense. One of the things that I relate this to in my Chicano studies classes is in order for the Spaniards to have conquered Mexico, they had indigenous allies, right, who saw an opportunity and capitalized it. But to go back to my nifty-dippy PowerPoint, to the mandate here in the state of California, for those of you who are aware, ethnic studies is now a graduation requirement. And these are the states that, remember that I had a partial or full ban, so you'll see a little bit of an overlap. So there are currently 17 states that are attempting to expand ethnic studies. And like the flagship of that is here in the state of California, right? And I'll get to this a little bit later with our department. So to the credit of Chaffey College, we hired 2 ethnic studies full-time faculty members, right? So that's myself and my colleague, Professor Gomez. And just a little bit of scale, I have students, grad students, that are basically on the job market now. And Citrus College only has 2 adjuncts and they're teaching 4 classes total. Riverside City has 1 full-timer split between history and ethnic studies. So one of the things that we've been talking about is that our department here at Chaffey College has the potential to become one of the largest in the Inland Empire, right? With 2 full-time faculty members, 10 classes being offered every single semester. But to go a bit forward from here to the bulk of what I want to talk to you all about is ethnic studies and men of color. My research emphasis in graduate school was single fathers of color. And I wanted to tie the 2 together because the link is not often seen. But one of the books, I won't read too much about this here, but one of the books that I used in my master's thesis was Punished by Victor Rios, who is at UC Santa Barbara. And one thing that he wanted to study was the criminalization of young boys of color. Oftentimes when we think of someone who's going to go to jail, it's like they graduated high school and then bam, they went to jail there. What we need to really come to terms with is that even children, small boys of color, are criminalized. And it starts in a very, very simple way. I remember being a kid, little Mexican boy that sat in the back of class, and I always got in trouble. Always. And I didn't know what I did. Right? It's like, what do you mean I can't do this? Right? My teacher would basically just yell at me and other people that looked like me. And one thing that happened when I was in class, it's like in 5th grade, there was this young girl sitting here, and one of my friends sitting here, also little Mexican boy. The teacher's on the board writing blah, 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 blah. And then y'all remember pencil boxes? The pencil box suddenly is on the floor. The teacher turns around, looks at the pencil box, and goes, "Which one of you did this? Who do you think got in trouble?" Why? Why did the boy get in trouble? What she did? My friend got in trouble. Why? What? Let me just ask. Why do you all think?
By default.
You got racially profiled.
Okay, that's an advanced word, but yes. If you all hear the phrase "boys will be boys," not only is that an excuse, but that's also a target. Now, in this book, one of the things that he talks about is what we call the educational pipeline. This graph is actually from the Chicano Research Center at UCLA. This is from a study called Still Falling Through the Cracks, which was published in 2015. This is based on year 2010 US Census data. So essentially what they did is they counted people. And if you took 100 little girls, 100 little boys, and you follow them from elementary school to the PhD, like what are you left over with? So let's go ahead and take a look. So if you, girls are on the left, boys are on the right, just a little bit of a disclaimer here. Our ideas and notions of gender have changed, but the reason why you only see girl boys is because that's the way that the US Census counts it. Right? Hopefully in the future we'll have something different. But if you are a young little Latina, you have a 63% chance of graduating from high school. If you're a boy, 60, keep going, 13%, 11%, keep going, 4 and 3%. So I can basically count the guys that I went to grad school with that are Latino, right? And keep going to 0.3 and 0.3. So out of every 100 Latinas or Latinos, you get 0.3 PhD recipients. So that means you have to go through 300 Latinas before you get 1 PhD. Whereas if you look at, let's say, Asian American males, they're guaranteed to produce 5 PhDs per 100 elementary school students. Now, this is not by accident. There are deep-rooted, institutionalized factors that play into this. But one of them are the microaggressions and the attitudes of teachers. We cannot pretend like all teachers are not racist, because some of them are, right? So now, in your head, you don't have to answer this. You have the little Mexican boy, and you have the little Asian boy. Who do you expect to cheat on the math test? Yes?
I would say the Mexican.
No, you don't have to answer it. But
Okay, I was like, the model citizen.
yeah, but which is also a detriment to Asian American men,
Yeah.
right? So we have to consider that these very, very plain, very surface level stereotypes are damaging to everyone, but it is reinforced institutionally, right? In pattern and in practice. Now, to go a bit forward from here to go backwards to what we call the school to prison pipeline. And one thing that we have to consider for a lot of young men of color is that we are criminalized very, very early on. And there was a study that came out in the 1990s about how the state of California predicts how many prisons we need in the future, how many beds we need in prisons, etc. So what they started using is the test scores of 4th grade boys of color. Because what the state of California at that point said is, by 4th grade, if you don't have it together, then there's nothing we can do for you. And just a little bit more from this text, that 40% of all students expelled from U.S. schools each year are black. 70% of students arrested in school environments are black or Latino. 3.5 of black students, and nearly 3 times that much, are suspended than whites. Black and Latino students are twice as likely not to graduate as whites, and 68% of all males in state and federal prison do not have a high school diploma. Now, just really quickly going back over here. This is a scene from the film A Better Life. For those of you who are not aware, in some school districts, they contract out to law enforcement agencies. In the LA Unified School District, they contract out to LAPD or the LA Sheriff's Department. So if you get in trouble in a school environment, immediately you have a criminal record. So one of the things I remember from when I was a kid is they would make us take our shirt off to see whether or not we had tattoos. So let's see what that looks like.
Take your shirt off. What? Take your shirt off. You get pictures of your tattoos.
You mean I ain't in a gang?
Indulge me.
Man, why you gotta make every Chicano get out here
Hey,
and
kid,
dance?
just take your shirt off.
What'd I say?
Let's go back over here to, I don't want to doom and gloom too much, but one thing that I want to build up is a concept that we practice in ethnic studies called restorative justice. So restorative justice, one of my favorite phrases to sum this up is by Malcolm X, where he says, if you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it out all the way, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there. So just really succinctly, restorative justice empowers students to resolve conflicts on their own and in small groups. And it's a growing practice in schools around the country, specifically in the Bay Area, in Oakland, which we'll see it in a little bit. Essentially, the idea is to bring students together in peer-mediated small groups to talk, ask questions, and air their grievances. And we actually saw this live on TV. If you all remember when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, one thing that happened immediately afterwards were people like Denzel Washington and other older black actors pull Will aside and basically said, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Right? Immediately, the Academy wanted to arrest Will Smith, which is the way that schools also behave. But to go a little bit further from here, let's go ahead and take a look at restorative justice in Oakland schools.
So come on in, everyone. Take a seat. So welcome to Circle. We have a few guidelines to keep us going. So what we're doing today is a community building circle. It is a Tier 1 practice in restorative justice. We do Tier 1 circles to build community, to connect with each other, to practice speaking and listening in a different way. Say their name, say their name. Okay, what does the word say? Go ahead, what does that mean to you?
What I saw was missing is 100% of your community feeling part of the community. And many high schools, including this one, I think there was a group of people who feel like they were the community and then everyone else was kind of left out. My name is Lori. On a scale from 1 to 10, I'm feeling like a 10.
How are you feeling from 0 to 10?
Restorative justice, we just come to a place where we hear every person's side of the story. Before I knew about RJ, I was a tough girl, like always fighting, getting into conflict. Like I was the one always fighting, going to the office, getting reflections, getting suspended. And then now, like, I see where other people come from and I be like, okay, well, don't do this, you know, we can do this another way.
In Oakland Unified, we use a 3-tier system. So Tier 1 are the practices that pretty much everybody should be doing all the time. It's relationships, that's the glue that holds us together. And when things break down, we do Tier 2, so it's a triangle. Tier 2, there are fewer interventions. Ideally, there are fewer interventions. Those would be mediations, harm circles, conflict circles. And then Tier 3, at the top of the pyramid, ideally should be the fewest that we do, but that's when a student has had to be removed and we reintegrate them through a welcome and re-entry process. And what I want to ask you is to share a time when you feel like your voice wasn't heard. Can you use your voice as a young person in Oakland?
For me personally, I feel like usually can't do anything about it. For example, like voting, like we didn't want Trump, but like we couldn't do anything about it because we can't vote because we're not old enough.
One time, I felt like my voice wasn't getting heard because I was like really little, and these people had like robbed the store or whatever, and I saw the whole thing, but the people that was like doing the robbery wasn't paying attention to me because I was like a little girl. So I tried to tell people what happened, and they didn't listen to me.
This room just to sit in here is quiet, so it's like a peaceful space. Outside of school is not like that for everybody.
My name is Monica, and I'm feeling like a 6.
What restorative justice provides that traditional school discipline methods do not is the chance for people to take responsibility and understand the impact of their actions on others. It's internally driven. It has to be because I understand that there was something that I did that broke a bond here, and that this breakage is connected to other breakages that make all of us as a community weaker. The expectation of people to take responsibility for their actions is the way forward. I mean, that's the magic. That's the revolution that needs to happen.
Now going back over to this. So I wanted to ask, by show of hands, how many of you have ever heard of Chaffey College's Turning Point program? Okay, very good.
I'm part of it.
Oh, very good,
Yeah.
very good. No, well, yeah, actually, if you want to maybe tell us a little bit about your experience in the Turning Point program?
So you're talking about the prison program?
Yes, correct.
So I specifically do the counseling for Chino Women's Prison. I was actually just there on Friday after not being able to be there for like 2 years. It was exciting to go in person and meet with the students. One of the things that we really work on is helping the students feel like, you know, not judging them based on their past experiences and giving them an insight of the progress that they're making with their education. So we provide workshops. I know Kirk as well has been part of the program. We provide them with workshops, counseling, we monitor their progress in their degrees. The cohort that I met with on Friday, they're almost going to be done completing the summer, 2 degrees, a communications degree for transfer and a sociology degree for transfer. Along with that, we've also provided them, when we've been able to, workshops that kind of provide them with empowerment and skills to reflect on how to be a successful student. But also, one of the workshops that I really liked was talking about some of the conflicts they encounter within the prison system and being students and how they have to learn how to monitor and change their attitudes. Because what I tell them is, I don't see you as a prisoner, I see you as an educated woman. And that's how I expect you to behave from this point forward when you're in this room, right? And some of the struggles that they encounter is like, well, but, you know, out in the yard, they tried giving me trouble, and then I said, you know, you've got to learn how to tuck in, and I talk about tucking in their chola, right? Because that's a lingo that they're familiar with. So I gave a workshop about that with some of my counselors, and I said, you know, it's just like me. I have my slang when I'm with my family, my friends, but in my educational setting, I'm going to tuck that in, right? I said, because that's not how I'm going to be addressed within the educational setting that I work in. And I said, and that's the same behaviors that I expect from you, is that I don't want you saying like, so-and-so talked above me, and you know, they get into it, and they've really learned how to manage that anger and kind of refrain and learn how to think back like, you know what, I'm educated now. Like, I don't need to behave in that way. And it's almost a sense of empowerment and helping them realize that they've committed to making changes through education, and I think it's really, for me, gratifying to see and I tell them, like, if I had your grades as a student, man, I'd be so proud of myself, because some of them have like straight A's, like literally straight A's, and I'm like, you realize that you're like dean's list, president's list, and I said, I would aspire to have that as a college student when I was in your, like, pursuing my academic journey. And I think it's a reflection of them realizing, like, man, I've made mistakes, but I've really learned how to change that up with this opportunity. And they start talking about envisioning how changing their lifestyle once they're out and what that's going to look like. Like, now I'm aware that I can't hang out with the friends that I used to. And it doesn't make me bad for leaving that past behind, but taking into account that that was part of the progress of where I am today, where I got to, but that I'm making a commitment to change my life. So that's one of the reasons I really enjoy working as a counselor in that program, because I feel like it gives a lot of purpose in seeing how education can change people's lives. And I think that is our mission statement, improving lives through education. And that is really a true testimony of what we provide within the Turning Point program.
That's restorative justice, right? Instead of punishing people, we give them an opportunity to be human and to humanize them, right? Now,
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I think you just like fed my brain right now.
Cool.
In a way that you were able to say that you teach them how to respond, not how to behave, but how to respond to other people out in the yard. Whoa, that just, what just happened right now? I just like, that was amazing.
And we can't change the dynamics of where they're at, right?
Yeah.
It's just changing the mind frame that you put all this work to get this program, to get these milestones that are going to help you get out early. Why are you going to put it at risk by reacting in your previous ways that you would have wanted to react, right? And they have that mindset where they're like, you're right, like I am putting in this work, and why would I take steps back, right? And that's one of the reasons I really enjoy personally working with the program, is because you do get to see that the aha moments in them, that they realize like I am doing something to like change my life and improve it, and it's just very rewarding.
Thank you for the work that you do.
So going off what she said, we as a, because I worked at some time for a nonprofit in LA, and we used to work with some of the schools in LA, so we used to implement restorative justice, but part of that restorative justice is us as employees believing in that. So we as employees, once a week, we would have our weekly meetings and do these implementations because as workers, a lot of times we fail each other in different areas. So we would bring that up in the circle. Look, you know, I know this happened, this scenario happened, but I support you, and how do I need to help you? You know, because I think part of that work is, if I'm doing the work with the students, I can't just be telling them the work, I have to believe in the work.
Yeah.
And so that's also part of that restorative justice, is believing in the work. You know, I think she's believing in the work. That's why it's also so rewarding, the work that she's doing, because she, it's not only the, como how we say in Spanish, de los dientes para afuera. We believe in the work. So I think that's what makes the work possible. So I just want to commend her for all the work that she's doing. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We're actually running out of time, but the last part that I wanted to tie back to is in ethnic studies, specifically in Chicano studies, we have a phrase that goes, la cultura cura, which basically means culture cures. Oftentimes, so let's go back to history a little bit. The Spanish priests at the end of the conquest, so this is in about 1525, they sat down elders and Aztec scribes, and they asked them, how do you feel now that you're in the civilized world? Right? What is it like to be you right now? And the most common word that people would use is, I feel nepantla. Nepantla in Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, means I'm neither here nor there. I'm in the middle, constantly walking through the middle. Or what we would say in Chicano studies is, I live in the borderlands, right? Caught between two places. And oftentimes what would happen is students from a very, very early age are disconnected from who they are. And that activity that we did at the beginning of today kind of illustrated that, hopefully. But one thing that we can do in ethnic studies, specifically in places like Tucson Unified School District, which was one of the most successful high school programs of ethnic studies until it was banned in 2009. But students would often say that they felt more connected to themselves. And doing that, they're able to go out and to connect with others. Now, like I said, it was banned in 2010. But going off of our time, I'll actually skip this part and go straight to question and answer. Big part of my class is always question and answer, but if any of you have any questions about anything that we covered here or ethnic studies in general, myself or Professor Gomez can answer them now. So, preguntas? Yes?
So as counseling faculty, I'm always interested, as are other counseling faculty, I think, in maybe taking a look at your syllabus. So we have an idea, because the description is very tiny.
Sure.
And so if we have an idea, we can better help our students decide which one they want to go into.
Yeah, so currently we're working on a website so that way this type of information is accessible. And then we're also going to work on something that has more detail for counselors here on campus in order to communicate that information with students and just kind of get a good understanding about what ethnic studies is, and from all the classes, what is it that they want to take or what would be of interest to them. Yeah, if that helps.
I have a question. So currently I'm a graduate student at CSUN, finishing my thesis at CSUN. So my question is more regarding your curriculum. Does it cover what periods does it cover? Because also there's a connection with Ricardo Flores Magón. A lot of people say that's a big connection to the Chicano movement, because there's the movement and there's the pre-movement to any movement, because there's a lot of work that's been done to any movement that a lot of people don't give credit. They're even in music, you talk about reggaeton, there's a lot of music that was done, that was laid before to have reggaeton, like just like anything. So where does your curriculum start? What areas do you guys cover, or do you guys cover the whole, like what's it called, Mesoamerica also.
Pre-Columbian.
Yeah, pre-Columbian. Do you guys also cover that era, or is it specific into?
So we currently have 6 classes, and they're all the introduction to, so we have Introduction to African American Studies, Introduction to Latinx Studies, Introduction to Native American Studies, Asian American Studies, and then we have, oh my God, I keep forgetting, what's the
It's
second?
a politics,
Yeah.
like a politics class.
Yeah, race, identity, and politics.
Yeah.
And then we also have the blanket Introduction to Ethnic Studies, which is where we talk a little bit about everyone. At other places, the history classes, like Chicano history, African American history, are typically with ethnic studies, but here they're housed under the Department of History.
Yeah.
One of our colleagues, Luis Fernandez, teaches the Chicano history class. So there we would get a little bit more of the historical component, but for us, we will dive into that to give you context, but there's not much time to.
Because I know in other colleges, like an example, College of the Desert, I looked at their catalog and they have intro classes in each area of, like they have Asian American, they have but they're all intro classes.
Yeah, and if I could just say, the reason why they have intro classes is because of the new
Yeah,
requirement. So everybody's starting with this, with the blanket, right, with like all the introduction classes. But if we're coming from a department that's been over 50+ years established in ethnic studies, where we have History 1, History 2 Chicano studies, so then there are more classes that are created, and we hope to develop and create more classes here as well.
Which I'm happy for, because being like a fellow machista, we've been fighting for these classes for like all my life.
Right.
Like we've been fighting for this, so it's good that this is out there. It's good that we continue it, and it's good that students are getting these classes and commend the work that you're doing. You know, so yeah. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, thank you. We have time for one more, and then we're actually out of time. Yes.
So I actually do, well, aside from what I stated before, I have some other counselors that are awesome that also go into Turning Point that I work with. So I don't want to just take the credit for that, but give them a shout out, Myra and Michelle, and my EOPS people. But aside from that, I actually work with the Fuente students. And one of the goals that I have is for Fontana campus, I actually want a cohort-based and ethnic studies course into one day with their English and guidance course. In my journey of academia, I also attended Cal State Fullerton. I learned history, which was the American history, right? And it wasn't until I took a Chicano studies course that I was mind blown. Like, I never knew, like, I felt like I had been lied with history, right? Because they taught, like, one-sided history and not really the other side of what happened. And that's one of the things I'm always telling my students. Like, you need to take a Chicano studies class, because it almost, for me, it angered me because I felt like I was lied to for many years. So for me, having the ethnic studies coming in is really exciting, and I do really want to work with you guys to provide that course.
Definitely.
Outside of campus. That was one of the reasons I came, because I'm like, I want to cohort into the program so that they take like an English, guidance, and ethnic studies all in one day.
That's awesome.
And it's all cohort-based programs for hopefully more success within the Fuente program.
We'll talk. We'll talk. So I just want to thank everyone for coming here and listening to my boring presentation. But thank you very much, and I believe lunch is afterwards. No? So.